Hey, where are these hoses at? Hey! Fuck your life. Bing bong.
The best way to get back at someone who wronged you is to live a happy life. But chemically I can't do that, so I'm gonna fuck his dad.
The earth is flat. Just think about it. The earth is 70% water, right? And it's not carbonated, so it's flat.
What'd you say his name was? Say it. No, you said Ben Salami.
Ben Salami.
Ben Salami?
Well,
His name's Osama bin Laden.
Going to bed early cuts into my time of being a wacky, zany, goofy little critter. It's either sleep or being a little critter. And critter always wins.
Amnesty International got Bangkok to Montauk on lock. Love my ass and my abs in the video. I'm promiscuous. My style is ridiculous. Ridiculous. If you see us in the club, we'll be acting real nice. If you see us on
The Union Jack of Ireland joined the UK. First version. Second version.
You just got franced. Share this with your friends to totally France them.
Brotherhood of Evil Gays, your assignment today is if you see a truck that's obviously owned by an insecure cishet white man, you know the type of truck I'm talking about, you are to leave a note on it saying, sorry I hit your truck, with your local Republican representative's phone number. Be evil. Be gay.
where am I gonna live, magical app? Ew, no, I'm trying to get out. Where will we go when we get to escape? Oh, no. Magical filter, where will we live? Listen here, you little shit, you better stop fucking. I feel like it's doing this on purpose. And I know. Please, please. Ah!
There are actually only two genres of high fantasy. Once there were more dragons and more magic in this land. But those days have passed. Perhaps the dragons shall return someday and bring a new era.
How the fuck do we get rid of these fucking dragons?
Well, I'm back down here at the well again, and I got a magnet, so let's find out what's in here. Well, if you missed the first video, this is just a cool well that I found. It's probably well over 100 years old, and I got a magnet, and I'm going to see what's in the bottom of it. So here we go. Well, I'm just sort of dragging that magnet on the bottom. It's hard to tell if there's anything on there, but it sort of feels like something's on there. Let me pull it up real quick. Yeah, there's... Holy cow. You ain't gonna believe this.
Lots of people are complaining that the new olive oil drinks at Starbucks are causing them to have bathroom emergencies.
Did people not know that that's what happens when you just drink olive oil? I came from an Italian household. If we, were constipated, we would take a couple tablespoons of olive oil. You digest some of it, but you don't digest all of it. And then it lubricates your insides, and then it comes out the other end. Olive oil's been used as a natural laxative for like centuries. Are people just realizing this? And also, coffee already makes you poop. So Starbucks is selling you poop potion, and people are angry that it's making them poop. If you don't want to poop, don't buy the poop potion.
Here's a piece of trivia for you. The word trivia meant 3 roads in Latin. But because street intersections were considered places for commoners to meet, the word trivial emerged to mean commonplace or unimportant. And since trivia was thought to be unimportant information, that's how we got the word. Trivia, or in Latin trivia, is composed of the prefix tri that we see in words like tricycle, and the root via, which meant road. The word via shows up in a lot of English words. Something impervious used to be a road that could not be passed through. The words devious and deviation have to do with being metaphorically off the road. And something previous was before the road. Something obvious is in the road, a convoy travels with the road, and a voyage, of course, takes place on the road.
Brennan, a general contractor's quote for getting the sword out of the stone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's in there. See, the issue here is this, is that it's not just the granite, okay? Because you could get the true King of England here and you could pull this out and that would be fine. But you're talking about damage to the blade coming out of a granite stone. You're talking about any kind of rust damage that's already been here in the interim. This got placed here by a giant or wizard. Do we know how long ago?
I think it's been there as long as I can remember, maybe forever.
From prior tenant? Okay. This is gonna be a dragon's horde. That's if I can get my guys, because there's no guarantee.
It's not fucking funny now, huh? It ain't fucking funny now, right? Everything a fucking joke till somebody pull out, right? Huh?
So this is still water?
Mm-hmm.
And I ordered sparkling mineral water with no bubbles. I see. So you understand why I'm furious, right? I mean, this could be tap water. What if I drank tap water? It would have been a catastrophe. A catastrophe at best. You know, I was so furious I had to have Samuel hold my butter knife. Say the word, sir. The word? The word for what? Oh, it doesn't matter. We have a secret code no one can break. Anyway, look, the point is I just don't want to go Super Saiyan on this place before enjoying my plate of unpasteurized butter. Do you understand?
Absolutely. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to go and I'll get you new water and I'll kill the servant who gave that to you, okay?
I mean, if it wouldn't be too much to ask, I really appreciate it. Daniel, Grandmama wants to know where her blue ballet shoes are. Slay. Samuel, Operation Kill Those 2 Women. Yes, my lord.
What does it mean?
So for today's pasta recipe, we don't have any marinara in the house, but I found some ketchup packets that I think we
Everybody's so creative.
we could use for the pasta sauce. And I ran out of pasta, but I luckily found some Cheerios.
Because it's different.
No, please no.
It ain't gonna slide down easy if it ain't cheesy.
I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. For a great low rate you can get online. Go to the general and save some time.
My bad habits lead to
The Fitness Gram Pacer Test is a multi-stage aerobic capacity test that progressively gets more difficult as it continues.
Oh, baby, when you talk like that, you make a woman go mad. So be wise and keep on reading the signs of my body.
The Fitness Gram Pacer Test is a multi-stage aerobic capacity test that progressively gets more difficult as it continues.
It's weird to not respect people's pronouns and still be a rap music fan. It's like you can't call a person they them, but you can call a grown man Waka Flocka Flame with no problem, never batted an eye. Doesn't bother you. But they them, that will fuck you up. Some rappers don't even have a name that is a name. Like 2 Chainz, his name is just 2 objects. Ice-T, that is a beverage, not a human being. Drake, have you ever met a real person named Drake? I don't fucking think so. 21 Savage doesn't even sound like a human being. That sounds like a license plate number. 50 Cent is change. And Future, that's just abstract. You shouldn't be fucked up by they them, bro.
Would you like to experience the darkness of Pluto? Well, you already do. Twice a day. On Pluto, the sun would appear 1,000 times dimmer than it does from Earth, but that's still 300 times brighter than the full moon, so you could easily read a book on Pluto during the day. But you can experience the brightness of a Pluto day right here on Earth. Every day, just before sunrise and just after sunset, it is as bright on Earth as it is at noon on Pluto. NASA calls these moments Pluto time. And they've put together a calculator that can tell you exactly when your next Pluto time is. If you go outside at that time, you can get a feeling for Pluto life. That is the brightest it gets during the day on Pluto. But my favorite thing about the Pluto time calculator is that there's a by the numbers section that compares Pluto and Earth. Pluto was discovered in 1930, but when was Earth discovered?
People online are always saying gay son, thought daughter, and I was blessed with both. My boy is the gayest kid you will ever meet, and I did backup vocals for Elton John. Wait, listen to this. Benny and the Jets. Good, I know. So I actually introduced my son to Elton a couple years ago. Elton pulls me aside and he says, "Oh my God." And I said, "I know." It just pours out of him. And my daughter, God bless her, her nickname in school was Norfolk Southern, because Choo Choo. And that hurt her for a bit. But then she went into environmental engineering, and she was like, the railway is the best mode of transportation. And I was like, you go, girl. And so everyone's like, are you ashamed? And I was like, ashamed? If you want to feel shame, Lisa next door, her boy, just got out on parole for carjacking. And don't tell anyone I told you this, but I just got a new Corvette. So every time I'm...
Right, come on, we need to go or we're going to be late for Bilbo's party. I put the fireworks in the back of the cart. I've got your pipe in my bag, let's go. Just saying, please don't leave me alone with Bilbo. Bilbo! You're not leaving, seriously. I've booked you a room in Minas Tirith, but check-in's not till 4. Guess I'll just see you in Bree then. This is right, he said Friday, 7 o'clock, Prancing Pony. Did you get a pint, you cheeky devil? Don't know where he is. He swung by Saruman's yesterday. I'll go see if I can find him. Gandalf? Gandalf, what are you doing up there? Right, let's get you down. Saruman did what? You just fly, I'll meet you at Rivendell. Council of Elrond's at 12, so we're going to do a late lunch today. I'll wait outside. Good luck. I would rather not go through Moria because I am quite scared of the dark. And Balrogs, brilliant. Thanks, nice one, Pippin. Don't let go of the bridge. Oh, you guys just go. I'll climb down and get it. So for this new look, I'm just thinking all white. We're surprising Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli in Fangorn Forest at 6. Shh, they're coming. Just go get AMR, but please be back at first light on the 5th day at dawn. Saruman is fuming. You're doing the whole white thing, by the way. So I've got you and Pippin a twin room with a balcony, all right? Pippin's got a well good singing voice. But if he's trying to burn Faramir alive, go. We can play this anytime. I was winning as well. What, Frodo's done it? He's destroyed it. Yay for him. Go on, Frodo. Right, Arwen and Aragorn's wedding on the 13th. Yay or nay? I forgot to feed Shadowfax.
Bird of the week. The bird of the week this week is the Cooper's hawk. This is a medium-sized hawk with a gray-blue back, wide, rounded wings, and a long tail. They're part of a group of forest-dwelling hawks called accipiters. They're known for having long tails, doing ambush attacks, and a flight style of stiff wing beats followed by short glides. This bird mostly eats other birds. It catches starlings, doves, pigeons, robins, jays, woodpeckers, and other birds with its talons and kills them by squeezing them repeatedly. They live in wooded habitats throughout North America, do well in suburbs and cities, and they love to hunt at bird feeders. It's notoriously difficult for birders to tell the difference between the Cooper's hawk and the very similar sharp-shinned hawk. It probably warrants a separate video, but basically, Coopers are bigger, with a blockier head, a lighter nape, thicker legs, and a rounder tail tip. Coopers give a loud cack, cack, cack call. Tune in next week for another...
Bro, it's a moose. I was fucking knocking over.
You're gonna knock over a moose?
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think you could pick up an 18-wheeler also? Like, where does it end?
You're gonna tell me a moose is as big? How big is a moose? I'm gonna look it up right now.
Look it up. Look up how much they weigh, you stupid fuck.
How big is a moose? A male moose can go from 840 pounds to 1,500 pounds.
Push it over.
Pretty big. Pretty big, but a female 440 pounds to 1,100 pounds.
Oh.
That's more doable.
Whoa, only half a ton.
So I will confer. I will give in. I will concede.
You can't push a fucking moose over.
Can you fucking let me talk, please? I will concede. I'll take a page out of your book. The female I could beat up.
No, you can't. Look up how fast they are.
How fast is a moose?
Actually, don't know the answer.
Despite their ungainly appearance, these large animals can run through the forest quietly at speeds up to 35 miles per hour. Okay.
What do you mean, okay?
That's not that.
Dust Usain Bolt in a race. Just dust him.
Yeah, because he's a human, dude.
That's the...
Welcome back to Economists Being Wrong About Everything. I'm your host Hazel, and me showing my economics degree the last video is literally the first time I've ever used my degree in my career. So here it is again. That's my economics degree. GDP. Most economists, when evaluating the strength of an economy, use something called GDP, or Gross Domestic Product. And it's a pretty gross metric, but not just because of the name. GDP is a measure of everything sold in the economy, both goods, like Sonic fan art, and services, so commissioning someone to draw you custom Sonic fan art. So the more stuff, like Sonic fan art, being sold, the better the economy is doing, right? Let's say you have a country where 100,000 people are starving, and then there's just 2 billionaires that keep buying the billion-dollar painting of Knuckles off each other. The GDP of that country would actually look pretty good. That's billions of dollars going into the economy, right? Hazel, that's a ridiculous example, you might say. That would never happen. Well, in the recovery since COVID, GDP has gone way up, right? That means we're creating wealth, we're making stuff, everybody's doing better, except 2/3 of all that new wealth went into the pockets of the 1%, and inequality got way worse, as you can see by all the crises. So what are we supposed to do instead? There's loads of metrics we can use, but I'll have to save that for my next video. Stick around for that, follow if you want, but in the meantime, remember kids, with GDP, a tree is worth literally nothing until it gets cut down.
The internationally accepted definition of forest includes clear cuts.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
A clear cut is included.
A clear cut is a forest under the internationally defined. And why? Because you have an intention that will eventually grow back.
Right.
So this is very much a product of having foresters define what a forest is. And so they see clear cutting as being part of forest management. So in order to count that you actually don't have a forest there
like
anymore,
a deforestation,
you have to convert it to another use, like palm oil or development.
Right.
As long as it has the potential to come back as a forest, as long as you're designating that as part of a forest management unit, it will always be considered forest, even when it's a clear cut.
So, so it's like
yeah.
You could have a 4,000-year-old old growth forest, all sorts of complexity, all sorts of biodiversity. You clear cut it and you replant it to be on 60-year rotations of the same mix of trees that exist there naturally, and that just counts as forestry just being good and grand, and it's not deforestation because you're not changing the use of the land, but it's forest degradation because you're drastically changing the quality of forest that exists on those lands.
That's exactly why this distinction and introducing the concept of degradation is everything. And if you want to really understand why Canada is up in arms over the EU restricting products that are associated with degradation, it's exactly what you just said, because that catches it, right? The degradation will catch Canada in all the degradation it's caused in primary forests in a way that the deforestation statistics never were going to register what we were doing.
America's been drinking beer from a company that doesn't even know which restroom to use. That's why I created Conservative Dad's Ultra Right 100% woke-free beer. Stop giving money to woke corporations that hate our values.
So, woke-free beer is one of the dumber things that I've heard in a long time, but I was so intrigued by this when I saw it this morning that I just absolutely had to know more about it, and what I found is absolutely hilarious. So first of all, 6 cans of this stuff costs $20, which is absolutely ridiculous. But more importantly, in order for these to be ready to ship by early May, they have to be contract brewed, like they have to be brewed by another brewer that already exists. And they say that this beer is brewed and canned in northern Illinois. And I have to assume that that means Chicago, because if it didn't mean Chicago, they'd just say the city that it was from. And more to the point, there are only 2 breweries in northern Illinois that have the ability to put something like this together. You know, that have the canning capacity and have the national distribution networks. And both of them are in Chicago. So the Conservative Dad's Ultra Right beer is being brewed in Republicans' biggest boogeyman city. But wait, it gets even better. Because the only 2 breweries that they could have contracted with are Lagunitas and the Goose Island Beer Company. But the thing is that neither of those companies is independent. Lagunitas is owned by Heineken, and Goose Island is owned by AB InBev, the same company that owns Budweiser, which makes Bud Light. And based on the kinds of beers that these 2 companies typically make, Lagunitas mostly makes higher ABV beers, while Goose Island does have those sort of wheat ales that are like this Ultra Right beer. If I were a betting man, I would bet that they have contracted to Goose Island, owned by the same company that owns Bud Light. That's just my speculation, and I could be totally wrong about that. Like, there could be a third brewery that I didn't find, but I think it's pretty likely. The grift is just absolutely unfucking real. These guys are hawking $20 6-packs of anti-woke beer that basically come from the same company as the one they're railing against. And yet large numbers of people are probably going to fall for it, because everything is so incredibly stupid.
This is super late and very niche, but it's been bugging me to no end, and I really want to talk about it. Look, me and the homies don't really give a shit what Rotten Tomatoes has to say, but the critics getting it so aggressively wrong on this movie, it's just interesting to me because I feel like 1 out of 5, who hurt you? Jesus Christ. I feel like this is one of those instances in which you have one job to do, which is understanding film, and you aren't doing it. And I think it's the first symptom of a much bigger ailment, I guess. This specifically is a failure to acknowledge an establishing genre in film. Genres are a type of story that shares similarities and tropes with other stories that have come before it, right? There is a script doctor named John Truby. If you have Letterboxd and you didn't go to film school, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And he talks about how genre can be used as a tool to sell a story to an audience before they buy in. When you write in a certain genre, audiences come in with a bunch of preconceived ideas as to what to expect. If you write a Western, you expect cowboys, horses, standoffs. If you write a rom-com, you expect romance, enemies to lover, overbearing parents, hijinks, stuff like that. Good writers know all of the tropes of their genre and either to lean into them or to subvert them, change them to make it fresh. Now, if you completely remove the idea of genre before going to see a movie, remove all of the references that you have to other movies that share similarities to this one, there is an argument to be made that all movies are bad. If you fell out of the sky, have never seen a horror movie, and wandered into the theater a couple of years ago, Get Out was probably the worst thing you've ever seen in your life. There's an argument to be made, right? Now, considering the success of the Super Mario movie, The Last of Us, the fact that there's no imagination in Hollywood, and in terms of superheroes, we're getting real specific, real high and inside with the heroes we have left. You could probably set your watch and expect more video game movies to drop. And I guess if you wander into the theater on these, completely ignoring the source material, right? Just, you're only going to enjoy the movie so much, right? A video game movie is kind of only as good as the Easter eggs that it can narratively justify. This movie did an incredible job stringing together so many independent IPs into like one whole narrative. Like, it's a hat trick. It's really good, man. I don't know. That, and then like a third act set piece that usually mirrors the gameplay. That's kind of it for video game movies. I'm sorry. And I don't know. Every critic on these has been like every dude in the 90s that just writes off everything as it's a chick flick. You would have hated Brokeback Mountain. You know? Come on.
Here are some practices in ancient Africa that Europe considered barbaric and uncivilized for the longest time, when in reality they were just environmental conservation techniques. A lot of people often wonder, why is Europe more advanced when it comes to technology than Africa? And the answer is very simple. Africa did not need any technological solutions because Africa does not experience winter. For instance, Samori Toure's Mandinka Empire was advancing in horse transport, Ethiopia in lion transport, donkey transport among the Bantus. However, these forms of transportation were only beneficial to Africans and unsustainable in Europe during winter. Therefore, they brought in cars and vehicles, creating a huge hazard to the environment by leaving behind toxic carbon prints. Other uncivilized African practices that contributed hugely to environmental conservation were mud huts were made exclusively from nature and were highly effective in protecting Earth from environmental pollution by actively reducing the human carbon print. Many African communities used firewood as their main source of energy, where only the dry parts would be extracted for use. It was also a taboo in many ancient African communities to uproot or cut down medicinal trees because they believed that the spirits would relocate far from the local community, resulting into plagues. Among the Agikuyu community, for instance, it is still up to today a taboo to cut down a mugumo tree, which is believed to be a home for ancestral spirits and other creations. The waters in ancient Africa were holy and were perceived as habitats of God, therefore always kept pure, and purity to the locals meant no defecating, washing, or dumping of refuse into the waters because it was believed to be disrespectful to the gods. Ancient Africans took seriously the philosophy of Ubuntu, which meant living in close proximity with the flora and fauna, but due to the European management that started in the 18th century, which is considered more civilized, the exploitation of our environment has gone up at an alarming rate. But today, the Tonga people of modern-day Zambia are among the leading promoters of the Going Back to Eden slogan, like living on trees that was previously uncivilized but is currently a luxurious move in Europe. In conclusion, it is high time that governments, policymakers, and environmentalists gave the conservation mechanics employed by ancient Africa the prominence it deserves when it comes to environmental sustainability, if at all we are serious about saving the planet.
I want to talk about pop culture icons from 2,000 years ago today. Back in day zero, there were still the girly pops hitting the curbs in their VW bugs with eyelashes on the headlights. But those cars were ships, and they were hitting coastlines. People realized that they could make the coastlines more visible by lighting fires on hillsides, and then they realized the higher the fire, the more visible it is, so they started building platforms to put these fires on. Over 50 years ago, in about 2000 BCE, the first of these platforms was built in Kantasi, which is an archaeological site in modern-day India, and it's unclear whether these were actually used for lighthouses lighthouses, but they were platforms by the coast used for visibility for ships. If there were fires put on them, these are the first lighthouses. Putting little fires on platforms was kind of the go-to move for the next 1700-ish years, but then the Pharaoh of Alexandria in Egypt, or the Lighthouse of Alexandria, was built, and that girly pop was up to 387 feet tall by some estimates. Its flame was actually visible for up to 40 miles, and the reason why it wasn't visible further is because it actually went behind the curvature of the Earth, blocking people's view. This was kind of surprising because people didn't know the Earth was round at that point, so it probably freaked them out a little bit. Miss Alexandria was actually the tallest man-made structure on Earth for about 1,000 years, but between 956 and 1323, there were 3 massive earthquakes that basically caused career-ending injuries for her. There were some repairs made after some of the earthquakes, but after the final earthquake, there was literally a fort built on top of it, so we knew it wasn't coming back. For all the girly pops who are wondering what the Lighthouse of Alexandria actually looked like, you don't have to look back because you can just look at Spain. There's a lighthouse that exists there, the Tower of Hercules, which is still standing today and is 2,000 years old. It's 187 feet tall, and some of that has been restored over the years, but still, she looks good. She looks like she got acrylics these days. The methods of lighthouses working kind of remain the same up until the 1700s, but then the science girlies found out the study of optics, which is basically the Facetune for light. First of these major developments was the parabolic reflector in 1762, introduced by William Hutchinson. This allowed a normal light to have all of its scattered light reflected back into a fairly concentrated beam, but it wasn't super concentrated and it didn't have any magnifying power. The next major development would be in 1782 with the introduction of the argon lamp, which basically used different fuel sources and structures to allow up to 7 times brighter lights to be produced by a lamp of the same size. Then by 1788, people were like, okay, optics, lenses exist, let's try to use them. And they realized that the windows of a lighthouse could be made into lenses, technically. However, the problem was that in order to focus the light, these lenses had to be massive, heavy, and thick. For example, Thomas Rogers proposed turning his lighthouse windows into lenses, but they needed to be 21 inches in diameter and 5 inches thick. This was a problem because the glass blowing techniques of back then weren't that good, so there would have been a lot of bubbles in it, and they would have been deep green, which would have made the light passing through it basically useless. Finally, the valedictorian showed up, and his name was Augustin Jean Fresnel, and he knew that the optical properties produced by a lens happen because of the lens' curved surface. But he figured out that you could actually remove the entire back of the lens and preserve those properties of refraction. He also realized that you could cut the lens into concentric annular sections and flatten it up against a surface. And as long as the curvature of that lens was preserved, it preserved the properties of the lens, which also reduced the amount of material required and mitigated the problems related to the production process, like the fogging of the glass and the discoloration. The final design of the Fresnel lens included prisms on the outside of the lens area, and that allowed for total internal reflection of all the stray beams of light, providing as strong of a beam of light as possible in whatever direction it was being viewed from. So after Fresnel's death, they started being implemented in lighthouses, and there's actually 6 different orders of sizes depending on the location and the needs of that specific lighthouse. And they get absolutely massive, with some of them being 12 feet tall. And they are some of the most gorgeous pieces of engineering I have ever seen. And honestly, I want one, but they're incredibly expensive. As the 1900s started to roll around, Fresnel lenses started to be used in a lot of different technology, including the SX70 camera from Polaroid, which is the first instant SLR camera, and that's partly due to it taking advantage of a Fresnel mirror, allowing it to be incredibly flat. It also came into really interesting things like this pocket fire starter, which is just a Fresnel lens that is incredibly flat and made of plastic. This is made possible by modern CNC routing manufacturing machines, which are able to do this on such a small scale, it's flexible and completely flat. Fresnel lenses are also used in cars, but those are called single-piece Fresnels because instead of being parts of a curved lens, they're actually just flat prisms that are put together at specific angles to redirect the light into a single beam. One of my favorite examples is actually from the movie WALL-E, when he takes a Fresnel lens TV magnifier and pulls it in front of an iPod to watch a movie, and those were actually really popular as TVs started to get bigger and more expensive, and for people who couldn't afford them, it was a great solution. Finally, as I mentioned, Fresnel lenses in lighthouses are incredibly expensive to produce and maintain, and they're very fragile, so a lot of them have been replaced in modern lighthouses with arrow beacons, which use different sources of light but still use Fresnel lenses just with more durable material. And for anyone wondering, the largest Fresnel lens that's still in use at a lighthouse is at Makapu'u Lighthouse in Hawaii, and it's 12 feet tall, 8 feet wide, and has held that title since 1893.